Welcome back to the Live Zone Prime Time on this Tony P. Tuesday. A New Mexico jury has delivered a landmark blow to Meta, finding the social media giant violated state consumer protection laws. After a 7-week trial, jurors agreed that the owners of Instagram and Facebook prioritized profits over safety and hid the known risks of child sexual exploitation and mental health struggles. The jury labeled Meta's actions unconscionable, ruling that the company exploited the vulnerabilities of its youngest users. The jury found there were thousands of violations, each counting separately, toward a penalty of $375 million. So for more on the case, what comes next, and what the verdict could mean for users, federal trial attorney Marlo Greer joining us now live on the Live Zone Primetime. Marlo, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again. I'm glad that you wore pink this time, even though you lied to your audience and said it was for the cherry blossoms, but I know it was for me. So.
It was, of course it was for you.
You led that in like a great lawyer. I didn't know where you were going with that, and then you just hammered it home. That was very well done.
It's my job.
It is,
Absolutely.
and you do it very well.
Which is why you are joining us here tonight. Marlo, were you surprised at all by the verdict?
I was not surprised by the verdict. I was excited by the verdict. There are so many kids out there. My daughter hopefully is not tuning in because she will be utterly annoyed with me. But it is really a hopeful verdict for the face of how Meta has to change its practices, although we're still waiting for California.
And in terms of, for the viewers at home may not understand the legal nature of this, what does this outcome exactly mean for Meta in terms of how they have to change things potentially, or is it mainly just a payment? And what does this mean for the folks that did sue and did win this case?
They do have to change things. It was a consumer protection case. And basically what that means is that you misled us. You didn't, your advertising, anything that you said about your company, that wasn't exactly true. And so there can be consumer protection cases from nursing home advertising to, obviously, this is what we're looking at right now with Meta. So the New Mexico case really focused on violation of its state's consumer protection laws. And really, it's the easiest way to say it is, hey, Facebook, Meta, you lied to us. You built this product and you told us it was safe and you told us that you were making it safe for children, and you were not. It's addictive. It is rife with sexual predators, and the jury agreed with that. So what that would mean for Meta moving forward, especially in New Mexico, is that it needs to change those practices. And we don't really know how we're going to see those practices change. Are they going to institute more parental controls? Because really that's their argument. Hey, it's not our fault. It's the parents' fault. You need to watch out for this more. It ties into the California case because that case goes a little bit further in saying you built an addictive product. Not that you just falsely told us that your product was safe, but you actually built an addictive product. And that verdict is going to be just as important as the New Mexico verdict, because I would be lying to you if I said there were not thousands of children out there, and that's a grave underestimation, that have been affected by this. Their mental health is affected, their body image is affected. I know a child who had somebody show up at their house in the middle of the night because of these things and locating her. And so there's a lot of kids out there that are affected by this, and it's really more than, hey, parents, just watch what your kid is doing.
So Marlo, you mentioned the California case. My understanding is that the jury there is sequestered, so this case won't necessarily have an impact on that one. But have the floodgates now been opened?
Would it be bad if I said I hope so? It's,
No.
have the floodgates have they been opened? They haven't been opened quite yet. I mean, we're really sort of tiptoeing through the tulips, and these are landmark rulings. Is this a product? Is this a consumer protection issue? Is this both? And frankly, it's holding Meta accountable, and that's really what we're looking for here. So I don't really look at it as a floodgate, even though you may exactly be right, and I do hope so, because it needs to change. It needs to be something other than, if I had my daughter here with me, she would argue to high heaven that this is not addictive and these are her choices. And that's just, it's not the case. And her teenage brain is not developed yet. Boy, I really hope she's not listening. and so it's just Meta needs to be held responsible, and it does need to change its practices. And I hope that we're going to see this with this New Mexico verdict. And I do think that we're going to get some verdict back that does hold Meta accountable in California. The question is, what is that verdict going to be?
What's really interesting about both these cases is, of course, the nature of the addictive product. And one of the big documentaries the last couple of years was The Social Dilemma. And it talks about the algorithm. Do any of these cases, in the New Mexico case as well as the California case, touch the algorithm and how it's structured? And do you have to change it if you're Meta? Because that's the biggest driving thing of how these choices are made, from teens to full-grown adults on these pages. So is the algorithm in play in these two cases, and could it be in future ones?
The algorithm is absolutely in play, and that's really the focus of the California case, because it is the addictive product component of it.
Got it.
It is, how did they do the algorithm? And the algorithm is meant to do exactly what these children that have bravely come forward and said, yes, I have all of these issues. It's meant to suck them in. And I hate to say that it's meant to cause these problems, but it really, really does cause these problems the way that the algorithm is written.
So they were found liable for this $375 million punishment. That's really a drop in the bucket for a company that I believe is valued at something like $1.5 trillion.
Something like that.
Their stock went up 5% after the verdict came down. So this is really just a
crazy.
drop in the bucket. Is this like a symbolic punishment, or is the real punishment whether or not they have to institute these changes?
The real punishment is whether or not they have to institute these changes, and the real punishment is exactly what you said. Is this a floodgate? Because it's not just 375 million one time. It's going to be all states, all children in all states, and really think opioid verdicts, opioid settlements. That wasn't just one state, that wasn't just one time. We came out with the data that realized that this is an addictive, in that case, medicine, and that's really what you're looking at here. So I don't think Meta can run and hide. Of course, 375 million to them isn't anything. It's a lot to us, and I hope that it will be a lot throughout the United States.
Do you think, from Meta's perspective, that they're going to just settle this and automatically pay it and live by the judge's orders, or are they going to appeal this? And could we see this case potentially move to the federal courts and through the Supreme Court to really get to a larger question of algorithms and how it should be regulated? Like, do you see this case potentially being another landmark case at the Supreme Court level, depending on how the appeals go?
I absolutely do. It could be. I can't imagine that Meta's lawyers are just going to stop. They had a chance to settle these cases and brush them under the rug, so to speak, with as many confidentiality agreements as they could imagine, and they chose not to do so. The California case specifically, TikTok settled that case, Snapchat, they settled that case, but the Google defendant is still there, as well as the Meta. So I don't think that they're going to take this lightly, because it does have vast-reaching effects.
Do you anticipate that these verdicts, when we eventually have them and we start to see what comes next, eventually leads to new legislation? Because I know there is a big push these days to get kids off of social media by any means necessary.
And I do, and I hope that it does. And the question is, as lawyers, as legislators, can we write laws that protect kids and really are effective in protecting kids. And that's really what we want to do. And so I hope that we start to think about that. The problem was, the reason why we're here today is because the laws that we wrote them for the social media companies. We wrote the Section 230s, the free speech, the it's not our fault, the platform, it's whoever posts on that. And that legislation, frankly, is why we're here today, because we put those protections in place for what became a huge company and huge companies. And now we need to try to protect kids.
When looking at not just legislative reforms, but some of these platform-based reforms, what are some of the items that you think Meta and other competitors like them can take in moments like this to potentially stop this potential floodgate of more lawsuits? Are there certain algorithmic changes that you think users would like to see that could really almost stop this legal pressure?
What I love about coming on here with you is you always ask me a question that my answer is, I have no idea. If I was a programmer, I feel like I would make more money, right? I mean,
I apologize.
You and me both.
I hope I'm down a dead end.
Well, it's just, yes, I think they're going to have to change the algorithm. There was evidence that they knew about this. They knew that the algorithm was addictive. And so they're going to take those people that are much smarter with ones and zeros than I am and figure out how to change it. That's what they should do, and that's what we hope they do.
And now, finally, I'll ask you about evidence collection. This would be a definitely good answer. So, in these type of cases, what type of evidence are juries relying on and judges relying on to make their verdicts in these cases? Is it more witness testimony? Is it some whistleblowers that we've seen in the past have gone before Congress? Or is it another piece of evidence that we're not talking about?
Yes. All of those. So you would
Nice.
look at whistleblowers that can come in and say, this is really what Meta knew, as opposed to what Zuckerberg came in and said, right? So you're relying on those people. You're relying on the testimony of the children that were affected, that are coming forward and saying, this is what I did, this is what happened to me, this is how I felt, this is why I did what I did. And unfortunately, you're relying on tons and tons of paper and documents and lawyers asking questions very creatively to try to get an answer that the other side is going to avoid. We have rules all of the time, and we're supposed to follow them, whether it's state court, whether it's federal court, and lawyers think differently about what they're supposed to do. And typically, when it comes to defense, they're going to try not to give you those documents because they don't want you using them. They don't want the jury to see them. And so it's very important. And, that's really what people are relying on. And my lights just went out, so we must be talking for a long time.
We definitely
Yeah,
are.
sorry.
So we will let you go, but real quick before you do, how closely are some other social media apps paying attention to this case? I know Meta's name is on this one. YouTube is involved in the one out in California. Is this sort of a warning sign to the rest of them as well?
It absolutely is a warning sign. And the California case, like I said, there were some defendants that settled. And so those settling defendants, they are looking at what they are doing as well. And hopefully we see changes across the board. And hopefully my child doesn't try to become emancipated because of it. It'll all work out.
Well, we hope that for you too. Marlo Greer, thank you so much for spending some time with us and burning the light out
Yes.
as we did it.
We apologize.
Hey, it's perfect. It was perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. It might have also been somebody listening in on our conversation.
Right.
Kind of, not to go down that rabbit hole. All right, we'll clear you.
Conspiracy theories now?
Thank you so